Today's episode is pretty special because we are talking about the illusion of having it all together when you are an influencer. The hilarious, engaging, thoughtful, and truly wonderful Dancin Wayne talks about his struggles with mental health and how he turned tragedy into the life of his dreams. It's a cool story with an even cooler guy. I'm so excited about it. You definitely don't want to miss this one. Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Lady podcast, where we make intervention easy. I'm your host, Dr. Ricky Turner, and I am a suicide intervention expert. Please take note, I am the thinky kind of doctor and not a medical professional, so please do not take anything in this podcast as medical advice. Now, let's start with Dancin Wayne. All right, so welcome to the podcast. I have Dancin Wayne here. I think everybody is familiar with him, but if not, you are in for a treat. So Wayne and I met on TikTok of all places, and which is the reason that I reached out to him to be on the podcast, and he was so gracious to agree. If you're not familiar with him, just go, it's Dancin Wayne 2, correct?
Yeah, it's Dancin Wayne 2 on TikTok, and all the other ones it's Dancin Wayne with no G.
No G. No G.
No G.
So you see his things, his videos, and the ones that just bring me the most joy are the ones where he posts these memes, and they're memes that's just basically pointing out how stupid people are, how mean or inconsiderate or whatever, and they're very pro women, they're very pro acceptance, and then he does this dance and he falls down every time, and I don't know how he has not injured himself. And maybe you have you injured yourself?
I have not fully injured myself, but I've never actually really fallen except for once where I was like on my back, like, oh, that was bad. And I get like reality kicked in that I'm 36, and I'm like, oh God, this is like painful.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah, no, I started doing, a lot of people always ask me, a lot of men ask me these questions, like, why do you post about these? And even LGBTQ or pro BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color content. And I was like, yeah, well, because one, I'm really privileged. Two, I like giving perspectives to people that you just weren't even thinking about. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times I even learn too, where I'm like seeing things, I was like, oh yeah, that's a great perspective I just never thought of. And mixing it with dance, something fun and, element of having a conversation was always the goal, was to be like, I think we forgot to have conversations with people.
Yes.
And that gap, I think we need to bring up these things sometimes, because you could be, what's the word? You could have blindness without even knowing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could be going through something like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the idea. It's like each one, teach one was my idea.
Yeah.
And the idea of like, no, you should talk about these perspectives, because like human life outside of your main character energy is still happening. Like there's still things that, so many things are going on around you. You might just be unaware.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that perspective too, because a lot of what you post, it's heavy. Like it's addressing very heavy topics. Like I remember watching you through the Me Too movement and stuff like that. And it was like, whoo, some of those hurt a little deep, but it's also mixed with you being so joyous and doing the dance and doing the falling and everything. And so it what's the word I'm looking for? It demystifies, I guess. It makes it more accessible. It makes it less heavy. And so people can digest it without being like, ooh, that made me uncomfortable. And that's the whole point of like what I'm trying to do as well. I always try to tell people, I'm a keynote speaker and I do suicide intervention trainings and stuff. And people hear that and they're like, ooh, could we not though? That sounds heavy. So you got to come into it with making a little bit light of it and letting people laugh and like giving people permission to feel the things that they need to feel, but also,
and even what you talk about, like grief is such a crazy thing, how people perceive grief and how things go awry. And like, I was always like, I grew up in a very small town, and in the small town, at one point I was the only person of color. So it was a very strange thing to kind of grow up to see the world where it is now, where I'm like, oh, this is amazing now. Like, I wish I
Yeah.
had this growing up. And I found a lot of unfortunate racial altercations would happen. A lot of it stemmed from just lack of education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really all it is. I'm like, yeah, because no
Yeah.
one taught you, or you never experienced someone like this, or it's just it all it comes down is education. So for me, and even for you, like when you reached out to me, this I was like 100%, I'm in. Not
Yeah.
even a question. I will make this work because I understand that, like, when you get to talk about these things, you're already becoming more informed, you're becoming more educated. You've just grown just by
Yeah.
listening to this podcast. You know what I mean? And you might
Yeah.
not have ever had that information or realize you're not alone when you're going through these things.
Right.
That's what the biggest thing is.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of it I find stems from education. So I really appreciate what you do. Like, it's
Oh, thank you.
incredible. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
Okay, so let's get started with let's get to know you just a little bit more before we get into the heavier
Sure.
topics. So you right before we started recording, you were telling me I've just gotten very fortunate. I'm living the dream right now, and to see you out there, like what I was telling him, audience, is I was late to a meeting because I started watching his hosting reel, and I was just like devouring it, and then I looked up and was like, oh shit, I gotta be in a meeting. How did you get it? Like, how did you get started? What gave you the idea to get your social media presence and then stepping into the hosting career and acting and all that you do now?
Yeah, so when during pandemic, just like everyone else, was very bored,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm funny enough was working at a digital advertising company, and I was trying to like push them in towards, I think short form content's the way to go, and they were like, nah, it's never gonna work, and I'm like, that's weird, because I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's definitely going this way.
Yeah.
They were very wrong. And
Yeah.
I as everything was going on, I was having this internal dilemma in my life because I grew up as a dancer. I grew up as like performer. I always did that since I was like a kid. Like, my family would say I moonwalked out the womb. Like, people were like, yeah, this guy was doing it always, always and forever. And I had taken a corporate job and lost everything. I stopped doing everything because I did the millennial thing to get a real job and
Right.
start paying off school debt and all these things. And I was just so unbelievably unhappy. And I didn't even realize it. But then I started to realize it as like the years were going by, like years. And I was like, oh, I'm living Groundhog Day. Like, I'm really like
Yeah.
gonna desk for 8 hours a day, go to sleep. That's right. I'm like, oh, I'm really like living ground. And granted, this job was still kind of fun where you would still get to go out and meet people, but I really wasn't being fulfilled in any kind of way. And I was debating on quitting, and I just bought this car, and I was like, oh, I can't do it now. And I swear the universe was like, here you go,
Yeah.
in the weirdest way possible. I was out getting donuts one morning randomly, and a drunk driver hit me and left me for dead. Left me. He hit me and then took off. And I was in my car, couldn't feel my legs. I went, that's it. Like, I actually was like, that's it, man. I wasted my life. And then it's gonna sound random. I was living in like a very small town, so like I knew the radio. This is gonna sound random. The radio wasn't gonna play a certain kind of music,
Yeah.
and I heard Chance the Rapper come on, and that clicked in my head that like, my phone's here. I can call. I could do something, and I think my legs were just all in shock, and then all of a sudden I turned on and I bashed the door open, crawled out, smoke billowed out, lost my car and everything. But then I went through rehab and all that stuff, like physio. But then, like, I was listed as no fault. So I didn't owe anything. I didn't owe insurance. I actually got money back for the car. And that was it. They was like, yeah, it's not your fault, whatever. I'm like, what? And then my head was like, no car. You just got a lump sum of money. What now? What's your excuse? And I was like, I don't have one. So I waited till I got my physio up and everything was like decent, clean bill of health. Gave my 4 weeks notice. They were like really petty about it. And they're like, you can leave today. I'm like, well, that's severance. So I ended up getting something from that. And then went full time on TikTok. Then I started posting, going live twice a day. And not because like I was like, oh, like this is gonna change my life. I was just doing it because I actually really enjoyed that part of my life,
Yeah.
was making content and having fun. And then it started blowing up. I was like, oh, this happened really quick. And I kid you not, Ricky, within 1 month, FIFA DM'd me. I was like, hey, what are you doing next week? And I was like, I was like playing coy. I was like, I don't know, I got some things in a row. I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. I was like, I have nothing right now. Oh my God. And they're like, do you want to come like guest host CONCACAF finals between Mexico and US? And I knew some people in there, and I was like, yes, I will make my way there. I will figure it out. I'll
Yeah.
sleep on the floor if I have to. Went there, did that, and it went over really well. Then I got invited to host a thing like 3 months later called the Arab Cup, which was like a test event for the World Cup. Did that, went really well, and then FIFA hired me for World Cup, and then I tried traveling the world with FIFA, and then other organizations got onto me. I started doing Formula One. I did Formula One in March in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and
Yeah.
just been taking me around the world. And it's kind of crazy. Like every month this year, I have gone somewhere to host or do something,
I love it.
and I'm like, this is insane. And like people always ask me, like, how did this happen? Like I was like, I think, not that I figured out life, but I think I figured out an aspect of life of that when you do things that genuinely make you happy and are
Mhm.
aligned of who you are, the
Yeah.
right things will just come to you. Like I didn't
Yeah.
like go out there. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna pick this one. Like, no, I was just genuinely like, I was able to receive that energy. I was able to receive like he's ready. He's jumped
Yeah.
with 2 feet, no like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. No, he's jumped with 2 feet, no parachute, and he's ready to accept what's coming to him in life.
I
Like
love
it's good
that.
in life. Yeah.
I love
But
that. I love how the universe just like takes care of you sometimes too, where it's like, you know what, you're not going to do it on your own. No car. How about that? How do you feel about
no
that?
car.
Ready to go now?
Yeah. Now, what's your excuse now? That was the thing, right?
Exactly.
And I was like, damn, the universe is right. Like I don't have. That was my whole like I can't do this because of this, and I realized like I don't have this anymore. So
Yeah.
why not, right? And yeah, I feel blessed, lucky, and I've gotten acting opportunity. All these things that I wanted to do as like inner child Wayne was like he was happy again because like I think for years it just disappeared. Like people didn't even know when I lived in that place. Like I had a partner who didn't even know I danced, who didn't even know like they just kind of didn't believe it. And like even
Yeah.
like hosting events, they're like, oh, I don't know, like would you do that? I was like, I would do this in a heartbeat for free. Like
Right.
you have no idea. Like I would love this stuff, but like they never saw me that. They saw me as like this corporate. I was like, this isn't me. Like what the heck?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I think it's really being true to yourself, really being true to your inner child. Like I often go back to think about what would Kid Wayne do? You know what I mean? Like what would he
Yeah.
be doing right now? And just the opportunities it's put me in, the people I've met. Like I've met lifelong people that I would have never met if I didn't just taken that chance.
Right. Yeah.
And thankfully I did.
Oh, I love that. I love that for you. I love the message. I love it all.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so when people are watching your videos, and this is where we really connected, was when people are watching your videos, it's just joyful. I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it. It is joyful. It's so much fun to watch, and you're advocating for people at the same time as you're making them laugh, and it's wonderful. Now, leading into the heavier stuff, you did post a vulnerable post one time, and I feel like it was like a year or so ago. I don't remember, but it was a little bit more vulnerable, and it was like basically admitting I'm going through a hard time right now. I am struggling mentally right now. And I remember I commented on it, and I was just like, I just reached out to be like, hey, I just want you to know, like, you bring so much joy to everybody. I just enjoy your content or whatever. And it was a few months after that that you finally saw that comment. I mean, you've got like 1 million followers, so
Yeah.
that makes sense. But you reached out, and that's how we became mutuals. So I guess start with, what has been your personal mental health journey? Like what have you
Wow.
experienced?
Wow. Like totally roller coaster. That's the
Yeah.
best way of describing it. You're up and then you're down, then you're left, then you're right, and you're doing
Mhm.
loops. You're like, oh my God, I'm in
Yeah.
circles now. What's
How do I
happening?
get off of this thing?
How do I get off of this thing? I thought I figured it out. Nope, drop. Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I think it comes in waves, and I think for me, I find it so interesting. I find like it's one of those things where you're kind of put through these things to learn these things,
Mhm.
and what you don't know, it's kind of like, well, I don't actually know how to deal with that. And I've started to look at that differently. Whereas before, I'm like, oh, I can't believe this happened to me, or this, or like, it's one thing after another. But now I've like started to sit back and go, yeah, I probably have to learn that in order for me to be ready for something else.
Yeah.
And definitely up and down with, personal life, relationships, friendships, family, even TikTok. I remember at one point during the last, not the last US, yeah, the last US election, not this one coming up. At one point, someone had printed out a billboard cutout of me with one of those like tweets and burned it at a Trump rally. I remember saying like,
Oh my
what?
God.
Like, what do I do with this information? So, and you get death threats and all these things, and it's water off a duck's back at this point. But
Right.
like, I think it's one of those things too, where like, yeah, I've gone through it a lot over and over again, and the thing is, I'll keep going through it and understanding like, yeah, the ride doesn't stop. You constantly have to work at it, and
Mhm.
it's how you deal with things. Like before, I remember my first account, I would fly off the radar or fly off the handle, and I would like comment back and like, make a video, call this guy an idiot. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. Like, but now like this is taking the wrong energy out of me. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, like this is here to give you a perspective, not I'm starting a fight with you. I'm like, no, this is just a perspective. You can understand it or choose to want to agree or choose to want to learn or choose to want to see why people see it this way and read stories that people write. Like that's the point. And I realized like as you go through these journeys of mental health up and down, left, right, center, I feel really grateful for the people I have in my life to keep me
Mhm.
centered. I feel really grateful to be have gone through really bad times to understand how to deal with them in the future because they're always going to keep happening. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it will always happen no matter what. It's never going to be sunshine and rainbows, but you just have to appreciate them just as much as the good times too.
Mhm.
It's a very hard thing to do, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Because I
Yeah.
think I think that's kind of what weirdly makes life beautiful is the
Yeah.
ability to feel not just happy, but to also understand sadness. And to feel sadness makes me realize I must have been really happy at first. You know what I mean? Like to get
Mhm.
this, I had this.
Yeah.
So and that's a really hard realization that's taken me years. And even still now, I still take it still when things happen, you're like, oh, but you just you gotta breathe and take it in. But
Yeah.
up and down, which I think is most like a lot of people.
A lot of people, and a lot of people get into that down phase and it feels really lonely and it feels like no one else is going through it, and stuff like that. And like, I love that you're so open about it because if you weren't open about it, people would just seem like he is living the life. He is living his dream. He is on cloud nine all the time. And it's like, okay, are you though? You're not all the time. No,
No,
no
God,
human
no,
is. That's
no.
not the human experience. And I love the way you put it too when you say, that's not the energy that you want to put out into the world. And at the same time, um, these things, it's the universe trying to teach you something. Like there's something to be drawn from this experience. I hate the term everything happens for a reason. I hate it
I hate it.
because yeah, because people are like, I'm sorry, don't tell that child that was raped that happened for a reason. Absolutely not. Like I
Right.
will not accept that.
Hmm.
However, I can find a reason in anything. Like I can find a lesson. And
Yeah.
so I like that perspective better. So I like the way you put that. So when
Yeah.
you're, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, it's so true, right? Like it's so easy to blanket statement a lot of these things with, oh, it happens for a reason, man. And I'm like,
Yeah.
shut up.
Yeah.
Part
It's
of me
all
just
in
be like,
God's plan. I'm like,
shut up.
that doesn't feel good to me.
Doesn't
That does
feel
not make
great.
me want God. Thanks very much.
No. Yeah, it doesn't make me feel great. But there is truth behind it because there's a lot and truth behind the idea of like what you said, like I couldn't have got here without that moment. Like
Right.
when I thought about that car accident, I was like broken. I love that car. I never had a car. That was my first car ever. I felt gutted. I felt like this guy left me to die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how could he do that? And you sit back and you go like, wow, thank God that happened. Or
Yeah.
thank the universe
Right.
that happened. Otherwise, I would have still been in a dead end job, or I still would, like, you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
going, what am I doing? But like that shift was like that thing that had to happen. Like that core memories are not something that are always positive. Core
Right.
memories are also
Oh,
traumatic and crazy. And like, I've had traumatic experiences since I was 9. Like I actually had therapy. First time I had therapy was 9 over
yeah.
child trauma. And like, you know what I mean? But like those things actually kind of build you in some kind of way, or they kind of prepare you for what's coming next.
Okay. Yeah. So when you're in that, I want to call it a dark place. Well, number one, let's clear this up for the listeners. Have you ever been suicidal? Like, have you ever had experience with suicidal ideation or attempt or anything?
Never attempt, but those thoughts have crept in quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, there's points where you feel so low that you're like, what's the point?
Hmm.
A lot of those things. And what I've realized in my younger years, like feeling that way, was that, again, it's so easy to kind of to be okay with negative energy. It's actually so quick to be like, yeah, I'm gonna be down, and you could stay there forever. Like,
Yeah.
it's actually not hard at all to be down and stay there. It's not.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I started just to appreciate things in life. Like, I traveled a lot as a kid. I travel now so much. When you see what other people go through and things are happening around you, you're like, man, I actually have this really good,
Hmm.
And there's a lot that has come to that. Like, I've had friends who I've lost to suicide, unfortunately, heroes, and it's heartbreaking to
Hmm.
know that it got to that point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
but no, yeah, I've gone down that path, and it's taken a lot. But I've surrounded myself with around good energy people and people who from all walks of life to kind of just talk it out, because I find you just mentioned it earlier, like, oh, like, people don't want to. I think you said it. You were like, you don't want to be a burden, or you know what I mean. Like, you don't
Hmm.
realize that, like, everyone is going through it. Everyone you see on TV, everyone you see on the internet, every single person, whatever you see, I'm telling you now, 100% is going through something, and you just have no idea.
Hmm.
And that's why I always try to lead with kindness, because you never know what somebody is actually going through.
Yeah. When you were talking about the haters on TikTok comments and everything, I'm nowhere near your follower count by any stretch, but people have opinions about what
Yeah,
I post. And they are, I mean, some of the things I'm just like, I am not a kind person at heart. And that sounds weird to say out loud, but like my default is not kindness. I work every day to be a kind person, right? And so
right.
I see those comments and I'm like, violence. But I have to stop myself. And like a lot of times I will type out what I really want to say. And then I'm like, okay, I
Okay,
don't
wait,
know
what?
this
Yeah,
person's story.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what triggered this. Let's not make an example out of them. I don't need more negative in the world. So, you back it off and delete it and put that in a safe space. And then
yeah,
let's just try to approach it with kindness. Sometimes I just have to ignore it, move on. But other
yeah,
times it's like I will approach it from a path of curiosity. And
yeah.
immediately if it's a troll or not, because if you
There's
approach
signs.
it with kindness and
Yeah,
curiosity, they don't typically, like, the trolls never reply back. They've moved on to somebody else. But like
yeah.
the ones who were just immediately triggered by something, like I've had some really great conversations with people when they do that. And so,
It's
had I
education,
react,
right?
yeah, exactly. That's the whole point is I don't know. You can't have too much kindness in the world. You just can't. So if ever there's a point where I can do that instead of being judgmental, which is my default or whatever, that's what I want to see more in the world as well. Because like you said, everybody is going through something that we have no idea what they're going through.
You have no idea, and how people react to things that are going on in the world is totally fingerprint. It's all different. It's all unique.
Yeah.
You'll never have someone who reacts to the same thing as you. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, like,
Right.
it's one of those things, like, you never know what people are going through, and usually when people are commenting hateful things, because they're probably going through something. I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people actively, unless they're trolls, but like, I don't think they actively want to be angry or like, this made me so mad. I'm like,
Yeah.
something's going on, man, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry that this made you it triggered you in that way, but I that's what I think, and like, and it's hard to do that. It's so hard to like let go, and like, instead of me like, you're an idiot, like, you know what I mean? And I've done it.
Yeah.
I am not remotely perfect where I'm like, oh, I've always been that way. No, hell no. I've like commented back and made videos, and like, and then you realize, like, oh man, like, this is, and you go through it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's not.
I'm not coming at it in a place of like mean. I'm coming at a place of perspective and education,
Yeah.
right? So once you have that, you're like, oh, okay. I'm not trying to be attacking towards anyone. I'm like, no, you're just trying to give perspective and education.
Right.
And if someone's against that, then okay, maybe there's a perspective you can learn here. And
Yeah.
reading people's stories based on those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So, do you notice for yourself, like, do you notice anything how do you know when you're headed towards a darker time, mental health wise?
I think it's when the normal everyday things stop being normal. Like when things don't taste right or things don't feel the same or things are, I don't want to wake up. I don't want to do this. I'm just gonna stay in this room all day. I'm like, I'm not gonna interact, and you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
if you go to the grocery store every day, you just stop. You know what I mean? It's when the normal everyday things stop happening, and the things that brought you joy also feel
Mhm.
not there. And you know what I mean? That's when I notice it, where I'm like, oh man, like I'm going through it. And like last year, I had gone through it too pretty badly, and I remember going so deep into the point of like I had to like my friends were even questioning like, "What are you doing? Like you have all this going on and this that, but like you can't see it."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
You
can't
become
see it.
so you can't. You're like, "No, I am a loser. I am this, and you know this and that, and you know, feel really grateful to have friends who I can talk to and who are emotionally intelligent and to understand, given your situation you're in, but also to help kind of pull you out. Because I've
Mhm.
always been that friend for someone,
Yeah.
I've always tried, and you know, and it's hard, right? Especially when they don't want to be handheld out of this. Like a lot of the times, even for me, when I go through that, I'm like, I kind of don't want your help. Like,
Yeah.
even though it's very much needed, I
Mhm.
don't want it. I'm kind of like okay in this. It feels okay to be in the box, but you know, deep down, you're like, no, this isn't me.
Yeah.
What am I doing? And I find that it's when the normal things stop feeling normal, or and the joyous things stop being joyous. Like things that you're just like, oh, like I do this for me. Like, why
Yeah.
am I not enjoying this? And that's when those flags go off. Like, oh, we're in a
Yeah.
place.
So you said something that brought up this thought for me, and I'm so glad you said it. You were always that friend to everybody. You've always been that friend to everybody. And it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you give a lot of yourself to friends, and perhaps you didn't always have the friends that would reciprocate. So you would
Oh, absolutely,
like a one-sided friendship,
absolutely,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people go through that where it's like, oh, I just want to make sure everyone's happy, or I'm gonna I'll be there for them. And then when you are going through the exact same thing, you feel like a burden.
Yes.
Which is such a weird thing where I'm like,
Uh-huh.
but why would it be a burden if you
Right.
were there for that? You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's you playing that in your head,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely, 100%. I was always like that. But I've found in recent years friends and people who actually can bounce these things off of, and that's also a very lucky and profound thing to have, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because it doesn't always come often.
Right.
Um, and people who genuinely actually care. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're not there for like I've had friends who they're there for the moment. They're there for the experience. They're there like
Exactly.
he's hosting, we're here. Like, but when things are down, they're not really there. Like
Yeah.
I reference. This is so funny. I always reference Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, and I was like, I feel like Puss in Boots sometimes. Like, what do you mean? Like, well, he goes on these crazy adventures. He does this and that and that. But then when it's done, he's alone. He's
Mhm.
there picking up. Like I have to now do this all on my own. And I was like, that's kind of what it feels like sometimes, right? But at the end of that movie, he finds that circle of friends that is always there for him, even in the low times and the high
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
And that can get confusing for anyone going through life in entertainment or even just life in general who are young. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're young and you know, you may know this, but like when I was young, I had like 1,000 close friends, you know, like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Now I'm like, okay, let's keep this like stick.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got the, like, protective barrier around it now, and it's like, I will be kind to whoever's out there. I will help whoever's out there. I am happy to do that. But the people in the close circle, like, not very many people get into the close circle anymore because, trust issues and everything, but it's a lot like what you're saying. I felt like I was always the one who gave more of herself than anything was ever returned. Not that I'm keeping like a tab of like, remember when I helped you? It's not like that, but it's like, why is it all of a sudden crickets when I'm going through a hard time? But when you are, I'm like trying to bring you dinner, and I'm, talking to you for hours and checking in on you, and, trying to distract you or whatever. And so, and it can be a really long time before you find that group of friends that's really like has your back. I know for me, like even in high school, that might have been some of the loneliest times I had. I was class president. I was in homecoming. I was captain of the dance team. Like nobody would have thought that I was lonely at the time because I was always surrounded by people who were friends. But I think people forget that the ones that are there for you, they're always there for other people, are also going through things and also need to be checked in on. And
Absolutely.
that's the piece that, like, if anybody's listening, if you've got that friend that just popped into your head, check on them. Let them know that you're there for them as well, because that can exacerbate the loneliness, when you feel like you've just poured from your cup and poured from your cup and poured from your cup, and no one's pouring back into yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I learned that lesson kind of hard. I call him my hero, but I won't say his name, but his nickname was passed down to me, which is funny in high school. His nickname was Brown Sugar in high school. And then I got it, and I was like, yeah, because I love this dude. Because
Yeah.
when I was growing up, I never saw anyone who looked like me or like in person. You know what I mean? Like you watch TV and all this stuff, but like I never saw, and this guy was the most amazing singer, entertainer, performer. I was like, man, I want to be just like, I honestly got to tell people all the time, like, if it wasn't for that dude, there's no Dancing Wayne at all. Not even
Oh,
close.
wow.
Like there'd be none of it. I wouldn't have hosted talent shows. I wouldn't have gone on stage. None of that would have
Yeah.
ever happened if it wasn't for watching this dude. And I met him, and I idolized this dude, and I met him, and he was so kind to me. It was crazy. And I was like, I've never had anyone like just encourage, like who looked, and as weird as
Yeah.
people always say, like I don't know, like it felt different because he looked like me, and we vibed, and he understood what he went on in life to make music and all those things, and he was so talented, so incredible, and then unfortunately lost his life to suicide.
Oh, no.
And I was off on my own. I went to the West Coast to do radio, and I remember I sobbed for days
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, I should have been there. But I wasn't like close either, and I never would have known to ask. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's why I was like, you never know what people. I would have never in a million years thought he was me. He's me. I look at him like,
Yeah.
yeah, center of attention. Everyone's talking. I'm like, but in those times alone, like I've no idea what he was going through, and I always think back, like, man, like if that dude just heard it more for me, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, or heard it more for other people, but it's such a difficult thing to go through because you start blaming yourself and you start doing all these things
Yep.
and you start realize how precious time is with
Mhm.
people you actually matter in your life, who actually are there with you. Like I have guy friends who literally will tell each other like, "We love you," like, "I love you, I love you, I'll see that,
Yes.
I love you,"
I
and like
love it.
constantly, and like it was never like that growing up,
Right.
never.
Right.
And I go out of my way to say these things because you just never know, right? And
Mhm.
then I hate to be this person who goes like, "Oh, because of my traumatic accident, I changed." Like I hate that we have to sometimes go through something like that to get
Mhm.
that idea of that. And sometimes, I get it, and like I'm happy you're here now. But like I think if we can get to a point of education where like, do this now, don't wait for something crazy to happen. Do these things because you want to, and I know you want to. You're just
Yeah.
kind of afraid, or you know what I mean. But like, do them because you just never know, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow is definitely not granted, and I I owe so much to that guy, like so much. He what a legend. And it wasn't like, this super famous person. Like no, he was like my guy in my high school. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and I love that person so much, and did for me more than what people could ever imagine. And
Yeah.
for him to go down, like I thought about him right before you had reached out to me about this, and I was like, yeah, I haven't thought about that in a while, and not in a negative way, but in the way where I'm like, I never would have thought. Like I had
Mhm.
everything, to me, had everything going on. And,
Right.
like
Right.
he was the guy. I'm looking up to this guy, and he's watching me do all these crazy things. And he's like, you never know what people mean to you and stuff.
Right. That so, you've never heard me speak. But when I'm doing keynotes or even suicide intervention training specifically, one activity that I do every time is I'm like, I need you to picture who is the person in your life you can't live without. Like you just, there's somebody that if you lost them, you would, it would just crush you. Now imagine that tomorrow morning you wake up and you've gotten news that they took their life. They have died by suicide and you had no idea. What do you wish you would have told them before? And then I say, now get your phone out and I want you to text them what you wish you would have told them, because we don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow, but we don't want to have things left unsaid. And so somebody has popped into your head, text them. Now you don't have to text them exactly what you wish you would have said, because obviously, you know, that can get pretty deep. But I give people permission. I'm like, say, hey, I've at a keynote right now, and this crazy lady said, pick somebody that I don't want to lose. I picked you. Don't make it weird. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. But as long as, you know, you're putting it out there, what's fun is like, I will pause and I'll be like, I'm going to do it with you. And my friends are all used to it now. And so whoever I pick at random, they're always like, where are you speaking at today? Like they know already. But at first it was really awkward and weird because, you know, I would text them, hey, just thinking about you, wanting you to know I love you and cherish you in my life or something like that. And I would get text messages back. Are you doing okay? What's going on? You know, and it takes a minute to kind of break that down. But like being in, you know, around family and friends who do openly say, I love you, you know, I care about you. Especially when it comes to men, because that's so abnormal. You know, women, it's okay to say you love each other and everything, but men, you know, that's not as masculine or whatever. But I don't know. Have you ever listened to Smartless, the podcast?
I have. Yeah, they're great.
I love them. And they're constantly telling each other they love each other. And it's just like, this is such an uplifting environment. I love it. I
think in my experience, growing up as an adult and male, it's like I feel like males, like men, figure it out way later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not like something that just comes up, but I'm happy it does. And it's one of those things too where, again, going through traumatic events, going through things, everybody has gone, like at the age I'm at now, it's so crazy to look because everyone knows someone who's gone through this or this or this or this or this. And I'm like, oh, and I find that's why men, I don't know what it is, but I find men at this age now are more receptible for that. And if they're not, like it's one of those things where I break it in them. I'm like, I'm saying it to you, bro. You're gonna
I will make it weird.
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna get weird about it, man. I'm coming in. Like it's too late. Like because I know that it's not granted, man. And it's not it's crazy to think that it has something like I hate that like something bad has to happen in order for people to realize that.
Yeah.
We should get to a certain point of like understanding that mental health hurdle. Mm-hmm. I heard this crazy thing that Neil deGrasse Tyson said by the year, I think he said 2100, that he thinks that mental health will all be gone because of the trajectory we're at now. It won't be gone, but it'll be one of those things where it's like the understandable idea of like, this is what this person is going through. This is acknowledged. This is such a normal thing. You know what I mean? And like to understand, like, because we're on this path of understanding feelings, emotions that, you know, you're watching that we're like as I don't know how old you are, but like millennials have really like started the wave, and now you're watching Gen X or Gen Z and Gen Alpha like take it even further and you know past them. You know what I mean? Like we grew up with 2 generations before us who nothing. Yeah. So like to watch that and like for him to be like, yeah, by 2100, like that's shocking. I'm like, yeah, actually makes sense. I think the idea of like we'll have this really self-awareness about these things.
Yeah.
It will be very tough. And I think that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, because if you start here, you mean, again, nothing to like, people are taking mental health days at work, like this and this, and therapy's up. And they're like, oh, I'm like, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
It's like amazing to me where I'm like, I've told this to so many friends and people too who are going through things. I'm like, man, just do therapy. Like, why? I'm like, As I'm just telling you, just do it. Just do it.
And there's
What's
so
the worst
many
can happen?
different types.
You could do it. You could do it, and you hate it, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many different types. So what do you have to lose at this point? Because like,
Yeah.
and I tell people that all the time. Like even when people are like, "Oh, gym's my therapy," this and that, I'm like, "Yeah, these are coping things. These are
Mhm.
good, but you need you
Yeah.
need more substance, man." Like, and that's the thing too. Like people don't understand. Some people don't understand. A lot of people do, I think. But it's work. This is
It
work.
is.
Like you're constantly working at, and this is something that I love seeing that kids now or kids like Gen Alpha kids know about therapy. They're very aware of therapy. They're
Oh,
very
for
aware of
sure.
feelings, and I'm just like, whoa, I wish I had that growing up. But now I'm so excited
Yeah.
to know that's just normal for them to be
So
that.
earlier you were talking about like you had some sort of childhood trauma, and at 9 was the first time that you went to a therapist. And when you
It's
said
called a
that,
counselor back then. Yeah.
counselor, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, like the trauma that I went through, the court tried to give, they were like, we can provide counseling for them. And my parents were like, no, my kids are not crazy. They do not need therapy. And it was like, I wonder how different my life would have been had they been like, let's explore that a little bit. But I'm like elder millennial. I'm scratching at Gen X. I'm like I can scratch their backs really easily. So I have a lot of those tendencies growing up. And then now, like my son, who is, I mean, does he have some trauma? Sure, everybody does, but like he's living a really cush life. It's almost absurd. Like I look at him and I'm like, boy, I feel like I need to rub your face in dirt just a little bit, just to
Right.
toughen you up a little bit, you know. But he went through a time with anxiety where he needed to see a therapist and he needed to be on a antidepressant for just a little bit. It was short lived, and we never made a big deal out of it or anything. But he came home one day and he's like, "Yeah, I told my friends I'm on Prozac, blah 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 blah," and I was like, and I had to check my own self there because I was like, why are you telling people? But I didn't say that out loud, but I was like, what a different world. Like
Yeah.
when I was his age, it was like absolutely no counseling, no nothing, you're not crazy. And then, he and his friends, middle school just had a conversation about it and no one thought anything different of it. It was like sky's blue, the grass is green, I'm on Prozac. You know,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
so normal. And I
I,
love that.
yeah. I remember being pulled out of class to go to counseling, which
Yeah.
was therapy, and like you would hear the voices. Like people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh yeah, man, he's going here." I'm like, "Fuck," and I would put my head down. And I remember I felt so weird at first, but then after like my third or fourth session, I just was so happy
Yeah.
that someone wanted to hear it from me and hear
Yeah.
it in a different way. And you know what I mean? And like I know what I went through was kind of honestly really surreal. So I think that's why the situation with my family were like, okay, maybe he should.
Yeah.
Like, what's gonna happen? And there was less they even around them, like, oh, like that's for crazy people and blah blah blah. And
Right.
like, but I'm happy they did it. And
Yeah.
I think it gave me that, empathy quick. Like I
Yeah.
always had like I always grew up with empathy. I was never like the cool kid. I always got bullied, I was always like that. So empathy for me came, when you get bullied a lot, like you understand like when people are going through stuff and all those
Yeah.
things, right? Like there's a it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, going through what I went through and then having therapy, um, my empathy card just jumped. And not to say it's always on or anything like that. It as a kid and as you're growing up, you keep learning. But like I realized that like if I didn't have that, oh man, like I don't think I'd be sitting here talking with you.
Yeah.
I'd be
Yeah.
talking to you 10 years from now, maybe. You know what I mean? Because that jump
Yeah.
is so big, right?
Yeah.
Like how much like just that act of like someone talking to you
Yeah.
because
And
they
there's
want to talk to you.
there's misconceptions too about therapy, I think, for people who haven't actually done it. Like I feel like I'm a veteran at this point. I've tried all the different things, right? And some of them broke my brain. Like, have you ever done brain spotting or EMDR? It was like reprocessing trauma or something. And like I was so skeptical. And then all of a sudden something clicked in my head and I'm like sobbing and I'm like, where did that come from? Like, but
Wow.
they say the brain knows the way or whatever. So I've tried a lot of different stuff. Um, but you hit on it. It is work. You have to put in the work. It can't be just going through the steps of like, okay, well, they said counseling will help, so I'll do counseling. And then, you've got to be vulnerable. You've got to trust the process. You've got to do the things they say to do. You've got to be willing to feel those big feelings when they come out and be, I always try to stop myself from crying. And the last therapist I had, he was like, we've got time. It'll go. Just give it a minute or two. We're just going to sit here in silence. And then I'm like, it just
Right.
really flows then. So,
And it's crazy too, because I've even met people in the same situation where they're like, they'll acknowledge they have to do therapy, but then don't put work in. And
mhm.
you're like, I'll sit there, like, yeah, but I went to therapy. I'm like, okay, but like that means nothing. Like
Yeah.
that was the first step. Right?
Yeah.
And now you gotta take the next step is taking what they said, and then the third step is putting that into actual action.
Yeah.
Like so, I'm like it's work. Like just when people like, if you work out, right? Like, why wouldn't you work out your brain?
Right. Right.
You have to work it out.
Yeah. Agreed.
It needs to work.
Agreed.
It needs to work out, right? So like, if you want to get bigger and stronger on things, cool. You go to the gym, you work out. If you want to get smarter and more educated, more self-aware, you're gonna have to work your brain out.
Yep.
Otherwise, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, I'm like, well, yeah, you're not.
That's insanity. Yeah.
It's insanity. You're not
Yeah.
growing then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good messages. So when you feel the roller coaster hitting back down, you've kind of talked about what you notice about yourself. How you can kind of tell the warning signs for you. And your friends obviously can tell a little bit too, because you've talked about how they check in with you. What are the things that people around you do that help you the most when you're feeling like that?
So I find people will. So I've even said this to friends too. People who go through breakups, go through losses, grief, any kind of grief. I put that all in the
Mhm.
category of grief because when you break up with someone, you lose someone, all that, you lose. It feels like you lose them. It's a grief.
Right.
I find my friends will put me in situations to just change what my trajectory is doing. So if my trajectory is sitting in my bed in the dark watching movies,
Mhm.
they'll be like, all right, we're going out. I don't want to go out and meet people. Okay, I just need you to move from this room to my basement. Like, there's no one else. Like, all right, and we'll work our way up to having humans around us.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like a lot of it, like even when people go through breakups and stuff, like I tell people, like, look, it's gonna be. I can't sugarcoat this. This is gonna suck. Like it's just
Yeah.
gonna suck. It is what it is. Take the time, but don't sit in this forever. And
Yeah.
then start saying yes to things.
Yeah.
Just put yourself in situations that not like make like you were like, oh, I love these things. No, I just need you to change your environment slowly, right? And then
Mhm.
eventually things will slowly start. You'll almost start forgetting. You never really forget, but you become distracted in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And good distractions, healthy distractions.
Right.
Therapy, gym, um, playing board games with your friends, playing video
Yeah.
games, this and that. Like, just try to do things, right? And that's the thing. My friends will go out their way to send messages. You
Mhm.
could pick up a vibe, like, all right, he's going for it, or he's not going for it. I'm like, all right, let's slowly bring him out. Like, hey, I'll come pick you up. I'll
Yeah.
send an Uber. Like,
Yeah.
make it so that there's no,
Mhm.
car payment anymore. Like, no. Here's the car payment. No more. It's gone. I'll pull you out. I'll pick you up. I'll send you food. I'll do this. Like, so my friends are very hyper aware, and even the internet knows when I'm not okay. Like, I'll do a
Yeah.
live. Like, I remember the scariest thing I ever did was I did a live, and I unintentionally, like, someone said something, and I bawled, like, and then I was like looking at the numbers, and it was like, oh yeah, like normally when I'll do lives, like I do them late night, there's like 40, 50 people in there. I looked up, and there was 35,000 people just watching me cry.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a very surreal kind of moment because then you get people from all sides. You get people like, what do you
Yeah.
need? Breathe, this. And you get people like, I can't believe he's crying just for likes. Like you're just like, and then
Yeah.
people are like, I didn't choose to do this.
Right.
What the hell? Like,
Yeah.
have you ever seen me sob? And granted, I understand that maybe there are people who do that and they do these things. But like for me in that moment, it was a very cathartic, real, like, oh God, like I'm literally crying in front of 35,000 people right now. Like
Yeah.
it felt like I was on stage and I just
Yeah.
cried. And it was
Yeah.
weird because people were messaging me saying, I cried with you. I
Yeah.
sat there and I just cried with you. You weren't even saying anything. I just cried with you. And I realized that idea of like, oh, I'm really not alone
Yeah.
in what I'm feeling. If 35,000 people in there and like even like say 5% of them are trolls, whatever, 30,000 people in here and they're going through these things and telling me it's going to be okay. Like, I promise you it's going to be okay. I remember listening to people going, no, it's not going to be okay. Like, I
Mhm.
actually think it's actually not. I'm not going to
Yeah.
get through this. And my friend, I'll call him Big Mike, Mike O, was like, you get 2 weeks of this. I'll give you 2 weeks. You can't, man. There's too much life in you to be worried about something you can't control.
Yeah.
And these things, like you can't, like you have a privilege in life to live, and you're so lucky. So I
Yeah.
want you to take your time. I want you to do these things, but I'm pulling you out. And
Yeah.
you have these friends who are there for you, and again, even internet friends who are there for you. And I couldn't believe that I did that live, and I was still making videos. That was
Yeah.
the thing. I think that's why people were like, he's making it up. He's making videos. He's fine. I'm like, you don't realize I'm making these, but it's
Yeah.
distracting. It took me everything to kind of make that.
Right.
And because I knew I had to, because I knew I needed to get in some sense of normal. And I I couldn't believe it. And it was a shocking thing to be like, oh, I've told people even on dating profiles, I'm like, oh, I've cried in front of 35,000 people. Like what? Like, yeah. It was very crazy. And and but that's what my friends do. The real ones show up
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they
Right.
know, right? And not that like there isn't other people who wouldn't show up for you. Absolutely, there would be and stuff too. But there's a comfort and there's a trust that you build
Yeah.
with the right kind of people in life, right? Even people I've never met in real life ever on the
Yeah.
internet, I would go to hell and back for them. And I've never even met
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And and understanding that the world like is no one's perfect. Like I don't
Yeah.
understand why people think like, oh, they have to be this way and all these things. I often think about Robin Williams. Like
Oh, same.
I get compared to him so much in a
Mhm.
weird way. Like you're always so happy, this and that. So I worry about you. That's what I
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
That's what I get. People because I'm
Mhm.
like, I appreciate that a lot because I can understand that flip. It's like that I'm really sad, so I go out of my way to make other people happy. Like I
Mhm.
understand that comedic clown idea.
Yeah.
That's it's helpful for them to help
Mhm.
others when they're so. And it's funny. I often think about Robin because it's just like, wow, what a gem of a human being that
Right.
we when people talk to me about suicide, they always go like, oh, I've never met anyone or known anyone. I'm like, but you have,
You have. You
you have,
absolutely have.
you absolutely have. We
Mhm.
all know someone, even if it's someone not in person or
Right.
someone. There's degrees of how close, you know what I mean? But like, someone. And even honestly, I think it was 6 months ago, a kid from my elementary school um, lost his battle to suicide. And I remember just sitting there going, and he had a kid, and like
Yeah.
it's my age. Like my
Mhm.
graduating class in elementary school was 11,
Yeah.
and to know like
Oh,
wow, you know what I mean?
well,
So it's like
yeah.
you just never know what people are going through.
Yeah. I do live polling at all of my speeches, and it's all anonymous live polling. And I always ask some form of this question, but it starts out: have you ever known somebody who's died by suicide or been suicidal? Have you known somebody who's died by suicide? Have you ever thought about suicide? Have you been suicidal in the last year? Are you currently suicidal? And the amount of people in this, I've never seen it go plus or minus like 3%. Okay. It's always right around here. But for in the last year, in any given room, it could be college students, it could be professionals, doesn't matter. 20% have thought about it in the last year. 20%.
Wow.
And currently suicidal is always right around 5%. Does not matter what room I'm in. I'm in the caretakers, I'm with the students, whatever. High schools are even
Yeah.
are higher typically, but when people say, no, I don't really know anybody, You do. And that's the
Yeah.
whole point is you do. So what we're trying to do is equip you so that you know how to act and you know what to look for and you know things that you can do because it's a little I'm wearing a shirt right now and you can't see it. I'm wearing a shirt right now. Your story isn't over, right?
I love that.
I have been stopped in Walmart, coffee shops, football games wearing this shirt and like people will either stop me and just be like all of a sudden telling me their life story and how they're currently suicidal and they were looking for a sign, like all
If
kinds
you
of
got an extra shirt, I will rock the hell out of that shirt.
they're on my
That's a great
website.
shirt.
I'll have to see if I can find you. What size do you wear?
Small, medium.
Small, medium? Okay. We'll talk offline. I'll get you one. But
Ew.
yeah, just little stuff like that. Like you never know this little nugget of something that can save somebody. And I feel like it's all rooted in kindness and intentionality. Like just be intentional with people. Life is too short. Tell them you love them. Tell them you care about them. If they're going through a breakup or they've lost somebody or whatever, and they're going through, or they're going through a depression for maybe no cause.
Yeah.
They don't have to go through it alone. We
Yeah.
can all be there for each other. And that's just the whole point. So I much love. I love you so much. You just bring so much joy. I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Is there, any final thoughts or anything for anybody listening to the podcast that, you just really wanted to make sure your message was heard?
Yeah. I think like something I always tell people, it's like, or friends and family who are going through something, it's kind of like jumping into a pool in the deep end
Uh-huh.
and understanding that you're sinking. You're sinking, and you're getting further and further away from the top. But I always tell people, like, what happens when you get to the bottom of the pool? You touch it and
Mm-hmm.
you start slowly rising. And that slowly rising is your friends, your family, the people around you, the little things in life that make you who you are. You're
Mm-hmm.
just sinking at the bottom of the pool for now, but eventually you'll touch the bottom and you'll raise right back up.
Yeah.
And I think I thought of it because I saw the still you
Still you
rise,
rise. Yeah.
still you rise, and I thought of that. I'm like, yeah, because you still will rise.
Yeah.
You will. And it's one of those things like, yeah, this is going to be awful, and you're sinking to the bottom, and you're alone. And then eventually you'll touch the bottom and come up, or someone will come down and grab you to come up.
Yeah.
And that's what we need, right? And understand that there are people in your life who are like that. And sometimes you have to remind them. You have to remind yourself you have that. You might not even think it. You might be like, oh, I don't have
Yeah.
anyone like you do. 100%. There's someone out there who's thinking of you this way.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking about you. They're looking out for you. They want to know how you're doing and all those things.
100%.
Even when you're even in the saddest moments, like, oh, I'm alone, or I just broke up, now I'm alone, and this and that. Like, but you're not. Like, you're 100% not alone, actually.
Not. There's
And you're not
somebody
the
out there
only
that thinks you are their world. There
the
is.
world.
Yeah.
And on top of it all, they're there for you, and you're not the first person ever to go through this. That's something I learned. I was like, I'm not the first person in existence to go through these things. Like, nah,
Yeah.
somebody else has already done this, and there's an education there. They're like, oh yeah, okay, what happens when this happens?
Yeah.
There's a book written about it. There's an article written about it. There's a video, a TikTok video. Like, there's so much
Yeah.
information. Like, you're not the only one. I
No.
can guarantee you. And there's we live in a world now where we're so privileged to have the entire planet or information in my hand. Like, okay, how do I get over this? Oh, okay, that was easy. Cool.
Yeah.
But think about like when our parents were going through this. Like, if they didn't talk,
No.
that was it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like,
you had to make a special trip to the library to find things out.
yeah, had to make a special trip, and you're like, I gotta return this. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, but that's what I mean. So like, you're actually just never alone.
Yeah.
Your story, you have so much of your story, and these chapters are so thick of like, I could have thought back to like when I was in, like, I look at them as chapters, like corporate Wayne, and Wayne who worked on the radio, and Wayne who was an airbrush artist, and Wayne who was a dancer. Like, I was like, yeah, look at, there's so many levels, and so many people have come and gone, and the real ones who are with you, and you just learn and grow, right? And
Yeah.
it's such a thing for us, I think at this age where you're like starting to really solidify who's around you, you're like, oh yeah, like I
Yes.
think it's just one of those things where you're, you know, at the younger you are, your group is massive, and then by the time you get to a certain age, your group gets as small as a period because
Yeah.
that's the group that matters.
That's
You
the
know, they're like
core.
these.
Yep.
This is my core group. These are the day ones.
And I want to take your I love the metaphor of, you're sinking and then you're going to touch the bottom.
Yeah,
What I need people to hear though, because I know there's people listening who's like, I have no one. I have no one. And I want those people to hear that means that you have too many toxic people in your life. And it's okay to cut them loose because those are the
it's
weights
completely
keeping
fine.
you down. Like, I
Yeah,
don't care if that's your mom. If your mom is
yeah.
toxic, bye.
Oh, 100
Life is
percent.
too short. Cut the people who are keeping you down out. And if you imagine that as like you've jumped in and you've got cinder blocks tied to you, and
Yeah,
you're
they're
not going to be able to
holding you
float
down.
back up. They're holding you down. You've got to
Yeah,
let those go so you can float back up. So,
yeah. The real ones in your life, aren't holding you with cinder blocks. They're giving you life jackets.
exactly, exactly.
100, you'll know. Like I know, and might be even overwhelming when you finally get that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you feel because you're like, what? I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like,
yeah,
well, I'm here with you. Take your time, right? Like, I've and it's an experience to go through because some people might not feel that way. But you're right,
right.
100%. Like, I've cut them out. It's not
Yeah,
worth it.
right,
I don't care who they were to you at one point or this and that. If they don't serve you at this age in 2024, it's okay
right.
to grow. But that's the whole point of growing and moving. If I still have my same friends I had in college, oh God, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh God,
Yeah,
no, like, oh, thank God I wasn't still friends with them. But
yeah,
some people in your life are here for a reason, a season, and a lifetime,
yeah,
and we're going through it, right? And I 100% agree with you. If you feel like you don't have anyone around you, because you got to start shedding and start making new
yeah,
connections, or,
yeah.
or even just looking around the room, be like, okay,
Mhm.
what do you actually do for me?
Yeah,
Am I there for you all the time? Or are you not there for
right.
me? Like, and ask those questions, right? Like that's a very people pleasing tendency too. Like something I've
It
like
is. Yeah,
work, and still constantly keep working to be like, oh, I gotta get out of this. Like, wait,
yeah,
where are my boundaries here? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. It has been just a pleasure. You're such a gem. I forever fan here. So glad that you took some
Uh,
time and did this. I think people are going to really enjoy hearing your perspective and hearing your tips and everything. So,
where can we like hear this and see clips and everything? Shameless
okay,
plug,
so
go.
we are going to be on. This will stream on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, and clips will be posted on Still You Rise Inc. I think is my handle on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait because when it comes out, just let me know and I'll share it on all my platforms and
Sure.
excited to hear it. And I think so many people I told about this were like, "Oh my God, please! Like, can I listen to it live? Like, can I like?" I'm like, "Yeah," because like it's such a good topic
I love it.
to talk about. And again, like
Yeah.
education and making things not relatable, but like it's more of like you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just
Even
not alone.
we live in such a wonderful world with the internet. And so,
Yeah,
like, it's okay to have internet friends. Like, people ask me all the time, I'm worried about my friend across the country, but I can't like be there for them. And I'm like, do you have FaceTime? Do you have a text, phone,
yeah.
anything? Like, you
You got
can
Wi-Fi? Should
absolutely
we
do that,
should we
like,
go to McDonald's and use the free Wi-Fi? Like,
exactly.
you
Not a
got
problem.
options.
Yeah.
There's always options.
Yeah.
I find a lot of people in life do that where they see like a bridge, they're like, oh, I guess I'm not moving. Whereas I'm the kind of person like, all right, I'm going over or going under or going around or I'm
Yeah.
digging or I'm bearing through, right? So just have this idea like, no, you have so many options. Even if
Yeah.
you can't be there, like they're the FaceTime, like you saying, FaceTiming them. They don't
Yeah.
like to FaceTime. Cool, send them voice notes, send them funny
Right.
videos.
Yeah.
Send them a video of you talking. Like,
Yeah. There's a
that's it,
there's a
man.
there's an app for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, whatever there is, there's an app for that. Find the app.
Find the app. There's you're not the only person in life who's gone through these things. You're not the first person in life who has a friend across the world and don't know how to connect them. Like, you're not the only one. There's
Yeah.
this has happened so much in our lifetime. We're like, yeah, you got options.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. I've got you 5 minutes over as it is. So Isn't he just a peach? Gosh, I love him. And I'm so happy we were able to make this happen. The goal of this podcast is to spread the word that mental health is not taboo and it is okay to talk about mental health struggles. When we do that, we make those of us with these issues feel less alone, which saves lives. Please make sure you like this episode and follow us so the algorithm czars know to push us out to more people. And if you didn't know Dancin Wayne before now, you do now, okay? And you should definitely be following him. So head on over to Instagram, Facebook, and Threads and follow at Dancin Wayne, no G, Dancin Wayne. Or if you're on TikTok, it's at Dancin Wayne 2, the number 2. You'll join about 500,000 others who have also followed him because he is a pocket full of sunshine on a rainy day, y'all. Do not miss his content. He's just as lovely there as he is in person. On the next episode, we get very real about what it is like living with bipolar disorder and what you can do as a loved one who wants to help. This conversation is raw and real and beautiful. So you definitely don't want to miss next week's episode where we continue to learn how to intervene with ease.